What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Our MMA show, Jimmy Smith, Ryan Moody. If you are within the sound of my voice, then you have an opportunity tonight to hear Jimmy Smith back on commentary with Kamaru Usman only on UFC Fight Pass, including the debut of Kamaru's brother. It is going to be through Titan Fights, always a great promotion with those guys, and I know a lot of you are very eager to hear Jimmy back on the microphone. Jimmy, I will give you a couple seconds to wax poetically about why people should pay to listen to you commentate fights. As always, they should.
It's not about me. It's about the fighters themselves. It's Irwin Rivera versus Danny Sabatello. That's for the bantamweight title. Danny Sabatello, one of those guys, undefeated. Sunglasses indoors is the best way to describe Danny Sabatello. Incredibly confident, a lot of trash talk, really trying to get inside Irwin Rivera's head. Rivera, the champ, is a professional, but, wants to shut his mouth. I mean, he was really, when I talked to him today, he was, man, I was a young kid too. I know it's like to talk trash, but I'm going to shut your mouth with my fists. So there's a lot of bad blood in the bantamweight title fight. I really appreciate that. And then you have Muhammad Usman, the brother of Kamaru Usman, who's going to be calling the fights with me. He's taking on Reggie Cotto. Reggie Cotto, 5-3. Muhammad Usman, 5-1. Big heavyweights are going at it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, the one I'm looking forward to, Muhammad Naimov versus Sean Brown. Sean Brown, a big fighter at featherweight. He was one of those guys at the weigh-in. Man, he looks like a 55er. He's one of those. He's like, I'm a little too small for 55, big for 145, but a lot of trouble with the cut, but he's going to be huge come fight night. And then him and Naimov almost got into it at the weigh-in. They were walking past each other. I was trying to get Sean Brown over to the table to do an interview, and Naimov says, man, I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you. And then Brown turns around and says, hey, man, watch your talking because it's going to be you and me. And I had to hey, come on, let's go, dude. Let's not start it early. But a lot of bad blood in that one as well. But I think it's going to be a great night of fights and always a lot of fun. If you're in Fort Lauderdale, come by and check it out. A lot of fun, great live show.
I mean, let them know the check is in the mail for the promo you just cut. Good Lord, Jimmy.
Hey, dude, Jimmy Smith, bro. That's what I do.
If you watch this
dude.
If you watch this on Saturday, I apologize. I apologize profusely because that all already happened. If you listen to this Saturday or Sunday, Jimmy Smith, always the consummate professional when it comes to promoting a fight. I'm ready to watch it now, and I didn't even care about it until 5 minutes ago. So,
and me and Kamaru Usman. I mean, come on.
Right. I mean, how much better can you get? With that said, we're here to talk about something that really, a lot of times, something comes across, the MMA radar, and you look at it and you're not really all that surprised, right? There's not a lot of things that just come out of left field. To me, when I saw that Rory MacDonald had been released by Bellator and picked up by the PFL, two things immediately crossed my mind. Number one, PFL got a really big name fighter. And it's not that they need them. They've got, their big name fighters are growing from within. But, I was really shocked that this obviously puts us in a situation where the UFC did not re-extend to Rory MacDonald. The Bellator system really did a lot with Rory. I mean, main event, just about every time out, I think all but one. The only time he wasn't was Chael and Rampage. And let me tell you, that's a main event anywhere you go, anytime they fight. So they really not only used him to his full value, but they put him on 4 pay-per-view cards with the Zone. So for them really to not reoffer, for the UFC not to re-engage, it really speaks to how much Bellator, I think, hurt his value.
It's such an interesting question for a lot of different reasons, from a lot of different angles. Here's my take on it. I think their attitude is we got all the eyeballs we were going to get from Rory MacDonald. Him coming over as a free agent did good things for us. Some people tuned in to check it out. But he got as high as he was going to get in Bellator. You saw how when he started off, great win against Paul Semtex Daly, a war with Douglas Lima, and I think that was the last real war of his career. Gegard Mousasi beat the crap out of him, draw with John Fitch, a decision over Neiman Gracie, and then a loss to Douglas Lima. The wave, to me, for Rory MacDonald had crested in Bellator. It's one of Bellator's best divisions at 170 pounds. Were there some interesting fights for him? Yes. Were there some entertaining fights for him? Yes. He wasn't going to be champion again. I don't think that was going to happen. I don't think he gets past Douglas Lima again. And really punishing fights. So is he worth the money to keep around? No. Is he going to have more success in PFL? Yes. Did Bellator get what they wanted out of him? Yes. Did he get what he needed out of Bellator? Essentially, yes. It was probably a high dollar value deal. He did his 6 fights. He got the belt. He lost the belt. The story of Rory MacDonald in Bellator has been written. So, can he have success in PFL? Yeah, maybe he wins $1 million winning the tournament there and the whole season. Who knows? He might have that in him. I don't think he has it in him to make another title run in Bellator. I understand completely why all parties, Bellator, the UFC, Rory MacDonald, went the way they did.
You know, it's so interesting to me when you put it in that perspective, because the way I look at them building him, they kind of gave us the matchup that we were never going to get, because to his credit, you know, Dana White has now put Paul Daly back in the UFC, and I don't think that's ever going to happen based on what he did, and that's completely justifiable. So we got to see that, I don't want to say dream-like match, because it really wasn't, but we got to see the matchup we weren't going to see because Paul Daly wouldn't come back to the UFC. Then we got to see him take on Douglas Lima the first time, where you get that, again, I mean, dream matchup is a strange word to put here, but the UFC guy, right, against the Bellator veteran. So you're kind of answering those questions, and he wins. And then we get the fight against Gegard that, again, you know, we kind of wanted to see. 2 UFC guys, though, at that point, again, you know, selling that card. And that's when I kind of started to look sideways at Bellator. You can't, you know, I don't want to say pillage, that's the wrong word, but you can't bring in guys from the UFC for name value and then main card them the way they did with Gegard, or with, well, I guess with Gegard too. I mean, it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't look good. But to me, really, where the wheels kind of fell off was the whole deal with John Fitch. I mean, he really should not have had any problems with that fight, and he did. And then that's where things, I think, really started to impact his value. John Fitch is a great fighter, don't get me wrong, but that whole scenario played out really, really hard for him. And I think it really put a dent in it. And then you go back, okay, he picks up the win over Neiman Gracie, and then you kind of bring things full circle with that loss to Douglas Lima, and it's like, okay, you know, where do you go now? And I think if you look at it, it's really hard for the UFC to go, okay, let's bring a guy back that only won, you know, 3 fights after he left. It really did seem, in my opinion, that, at least from other fighters' perspective, you see how damaging this can be. If things don't go all the right way, you go over, become a champion, and be dominant.
Yeah. I mean, there are just certain aspects to there are certain aspects to the fight that just, the fight game, that don't favor those kind of lateral moves. It can be hard to come back again. The UFC is like, okay, you went over to Bellator, great for you, wonderful, make the money. You're not coming back. So then what? Bellator says, well, you know, we kind of got what we needed out of you. You can't really move the needle again, taking on Douglas Lima or getting in the title picture again, probably. What hurt him most, in my opinion, was not just the draw to John Fitch, a fight that most people, myself included, didn't think he would have much trouble in, was, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I don't know if I have it in me to hurt me. I'm a Christian. I don't know if I have it in me to hurt anyone anymore. All these things. So then it's, man, any fight could be, had a bad performance, I'm out of here. I'm 2 fights into a 6-fight deal worth X amount of dollars. I've decided it's over. And the Gegard fight, the fight against John Fitch, the loss to Douglas Lima, we don't know when that cliff is coming, but it's not far away. And so it doesn't necessarily behoove a company like Bellator to make a long-term investment in a guy like that. It just doesn't.
So I guess if we can kind of agree that we're on the same page with that, what does this mean for the PFL? I mean, it's very taxing to their fighters to know you've got now a guy with real credentials coming in. Obviously, as you mentioned, we'd questioned whether his mind was there. You know, he really had made some weird comments, right? You know, I don't want to hurt people anymore. Not just the traditional, I don't feel like being a professional fighter. I don't feel like going through camps. I don't feel like putting in the work. I want to be with my family. I want to do all these things. I don't want to hurt people anymore. But now you've got a guy that literally enters a competition with $1 million prize where you have to hurt people. But the fact of the matter is, he's going to probably fight people that have never been in a ring with anyone close to his skill level. And if there's any slip up now, you can't help but think his value is completely gone. I really can't think of a time where we've seen somebody leave as such a high profile free agent, right? And then they get to where they're going to go and they don't really complete their goals. And then they end up going somewhere else. I mean, you really can't even put it into the context of any other sport, right? It's not like he went to AAA baseball. I don't want to, disrespect the PFL or Bellator that way. But he certainly went down to a minor league, didn't perform as well as was expected, and now he's certainly taking a step down. And that has to be a really hard thing to look at, especially as a fighter. If he didn't want to do it before, how is he going to want to do it now?
Yeah, but we don't know the financials of the deal. He could be getting paid a lot of money to take that step down. Being a big fish in a small pond may help him out tremendously financially speaking. We don't know the terms of the deal. That's an important thing to keep in mind. We saw this with Roger Huerta when he left the UFC, not at the height of his powers, but still with a ton of popularity. What happened? Pat Curran beat him. Then Eddie Alvarez kicked his ass from pillar to post, and he was gone. He was gone. Had some other fights after that, but never the same guy at all. And so he took the cash grab to come to Bellator, but it didn't work out for any of the parties involved. He realized real quick, Eddie Alvarez is on a different level than I am. That fight was an ass whooping. And so it's one of those things where you in taking the money on the way down, it can be a difficult or it can be a questionable decision and investment when the promotion you're in doesn't necessarily have the ability or the reason to help you and promote you. And what I mean by that is Bellator, of course, gave Roger Huerta, for example, Chad Hinton in his first fight. He easily wins that one. It was a tournament format. They could only protect him so much. They didn't know how good Pat Curran was, and Pat Curran beat him. And going to Eddie Alvarez was like, look, let's get the most we can, try and make a big fight out of this and see how he does. And he got his ass kicked. PFL, because of, once again, kind of a tournament season format, can't really protect Rory MacDonald. You throw him in there against whoever happens to be on the other side of the bracket, I guess. Got to go through the whole season, and if he wins, he wins. But there's not going to be any, look, this is a big investment. We have to protect it. Let's give him the right matchups, and that's not really going to happen. So it's risky, but also, what else is he going to do, and where's he going to go? Probably the end of his career at some point, even if he had stayed in Bellator. He has a couple fights left in him, maybe, makes some money and rides off. You're not in your prime forever. So whether he spends the rest of his career in Bellator or PFL, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's a matter of how can I make the most money with the time I have left? That might be PFL.
Let me put just a bow on this in a different perspective. Are we writing the PFL off too much in saying that this is a big step down for Rory, who honestly, let's be fair, could have went to outside of the big two, probably any organization he wanted to, more than willing to pay for his services and negotiate a contract, I'm sure. Are we not looking at this in the right light as saying, hey, the PFL saw an option here with Rory that has still a marquee value, still casual fans know and respect his name, and they went ahead and had the ability that maybe the other lower tier promotions didn't have to sign him, make it happen, and maybe they're going to build him into a star. But interesting you say, it's much like Bellator used to be in the tournament brackets. You're really at the mercy of how good the fighter is, as you are not able to really kind of, and we just talked about this with the UFC Korea card, you really can't give him those, I don't want to say gimme fights, because we learn with John Fitch anything can happen, but they really can't set him up to succeed the same they would want to. So there's a huge risk financially for the PFL here too.
Yeah, there is. And I don't think we're disrespecting PFL. There's a definite step down in terms of overall talent. I want to make this very, very clear. Bellator. And bear in mind, I don't get paid by Bellator anymore. That is in my past. I have no reason to say anything but what I really think. And even when I worked for Bellator, I tried to do everything I could within my power to say what I really thought. They have some really excellent fighters. The cream of the crop that they have, Patricio Pitbull, Douglas Lima, for example. Okay, just name a few. to name, I think, the two top stars. Do well against anybody in their weight class in the world, period. Michael Chandler, when he's at his best, is on that list. He's had some inconsistency issues in the last couple of years. All right. The issue is, to judge a promotion, it isn't how the best do against the best. Because I think Douglas Lima does well against any 170-pounder in the world. I really believe that. Overall, the pool of talent in the UFC is just deeper. It's not that the best beat the best and that, our champ versus your champ. I don't think that's a great measure of a promotion. The way I describe it is Patricio Pitbull, on a good night, can beat the best in the UFC. If everything went, if you had a good night. There are 7 or 8 guys that on a good night in the UFC can beat Patricio Pitbull. The disparity is not the top talent. The disparity is in the depth of the talent. There are just more really good 145-pounders in the UFC than there are in Bellator. Now, the top 145-pounder, Patricio Pitbull, I think does very well against the top in the UFC. The top cream of the crop at 170 in Bellator, Douglas Lima, does well in the UFC. But the UFC has 7 or 8 guys that give Douglas Lima a lot of trouble. That step down is in PFL as well. There are some great fighters in PFL. There really are. The overall pool of talent in Bellator is bigger than in PFL. So Rory MacDonald might have trouble with the elite of the elite in PFL. But it's the way up there that's going to be an easier swim than it was in Bellator, certainly than it was in the UFC. And that's the important thing to keep in mind is the guys at the top are always going to be tough. It's on my way up there, how many tough fights am I going to have? I think he has an easier time in PFL than he did in Bellator. I think he had an easier time in Bellator than he did in the UFC, generally speaking. But that's the nature of MMA. I think people look at it the wrong way and then, champ versus champ, how would it go? No, it's about your top 5 versus their top 5. It's almost like a team sport. A bad team can have one really good player on it. One guy that's really outstanding or whatever it is. It's the whole depth involved. And that's where the UFC has a leg up on everybody. They have a really deep talent pool. Bellator's second, PFL's third, and that's the way it goes.
Let me ask you one final point here, because I think when we talk about, the shift over to Bellator, one fighter that really stands out to me as kind of having that similar path that Rory did was going to be Roy Nelson. Do you think that we could see a scenario where a guy like Roy Nelson that, leaves the UFC, not on the highest of notes, okay, with the loss to Volkov there, goes over to Bellator, pretty much drops every single meaningful fight, takes a look at this and says, okay, PFL is the next logical step. And we start to see that progression because we really haven't seen that third rung. We talked, and you mentioned it there a little bit, there's a progression to things. We all know the UFC is probably number one, at least in the US, okay, as far as fighter talent and notoriety, then Bellator. But we've really never seen like a clear-cut number 3 established. If you have something like this happen, I think it really is a major step to that big number 3 being into the marketplace. Do you think you see a guy like Rory MacDonald, or excuse me, a guy like Roy Nelson say, okay, I'm going to go there too?
You could. The difference is heavyweights always have more value than other weight classes. They tend to hang on a lot longer. People tend to pay for them a lot more. And Roy Nelson has had a connection with fans that I don't know if Rory MacDonald ever had. People just like Roy Nelson. They like the rub in the belly, biker look with big beard and everything. Looks like a truck driver. They love that shit. And I think that endears him to fans a little bit more than Rory MacDonald, who he's an interesting cat, man. He really is. So the difference to me is Roy Nelson connects with fans a little more. He's in a weight class that tends to have more shelf life. And he's kind of made it into that legends category that Bellator loves and can make money off of. So he might leave. I think he gets more opportunities and more money.
When you refer to Roy Nelson as a truck driver rubbing that belly, I mean, that is if there really isn't personifying the detail and depth that you put into fighter breakdowns, I think that shows it right there. I mean, that's where you're really only going to get that. Yeah, you're only going to get that from Jimmy Smith.
Thank you. Booyah. Check it out. Titan Fighting. Friday night. Me and Kamaru Usman. Mic drop.
I don't even know what to say anymore. I feel like I've just been in the presence of greatness, and there's nothing to do but hit the stop record button and let anyone know that got 20 minutes into this. It was only supposed to be 10 minutes, but clearly in the last 45 seconds, Jimmy went to the well and pulled out some gold. So I'm glad it made it this far. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.